Hey everyone, this is Bill Kenney, CEO of focuslab. I'm here with another episode of the Debrief. As a reminder, the Debrief is a series where I sit down and have candid conversations with past focuslab partners. We discuss what it was like to go through the rebrand journey in a very genuine and authentic way to share that experience and those insights with you all. So in today's episode, I'm sitting down with a two-time rebrand partner. His name is Sergio Claudio. We had the pleasure of working with him when he was the head of brand at Marketo, and now again as the VP of brand experience at Zuora. So in today's episode, we'll be talking about the Zuora rebrand. Really, really valuable information shared in this episode. If you are someone positioned as a project driver on the rebrand, what I mean by that is not the CEO, potentially not even the CMO, but a really day-to-day team player on the rebrand where there's a lot of decision-making happening. You're a bridge between multiple parties, stakeholders within the organization. You play a really important part in the rebrand from that perspective. This is exactly the episode for you. Sergio did that with masterclass, and we spend so much time talking about both the importance of that role within a rebrand and the execution. All of these moving parts as the project driver. Really, really valuable episode. So have at it. I hope you enjoy. All right, Sergio, we're back at it. Dude, I'm so happy to be chatting with you again.
Thanks for having me back, Bill.
Yeah, so when I say again, so everybody listening and watching is aware what I mean. We had the pleasure of working with you on our Marketo rebrand. And now today we're going to be talking about the Zuora rebrand. And we'll get more into the dynamics of how those two projects might have been different and how they were similar. But first, can you take a second and introduce yourself and let everybody know why you're here, what your role was at Zuora?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm Sergio Claudio. I'm the former vice president of brand experience at Zuora.
All right. And you sat in a really, really critical seat going through the rebrand. You basically sat as kind of the lead and point person on the Zuora side, correct?
Yeah. You know, what was interesting about the experience at Zuora, Zuora was a company that was going through a lot of changes, a lot of evolution, and, looked at making brand its priority in terms of the next chapter of growth, right? Brand was going to be a huge door opener for, helping the company achieve some of its goals, which we'll cover here in a few minutes. But, what the company had never done was it had never aligned all of the different functions that necessarily play a role in brand, right? And so you had events teams that were in one part of the organization. You had brand and creative that were in a different part of the organization. You had video, web, right? All of these groups were in different functions. And so part of the journey in my joining Zuora was to bring those organizations together into a new integrated team that was called brand experience. And the strategy behind that was to say, look, the folks that are in brand and design, the folks that are in events, the folks that are in web and IT, they all have responsibility over the perception of the brand, right? The experience. Mm-hmm. The stories that we tell, the images that you see, how you flow between one experience to another, how you get from, discovery into the product, right? Through the login screens. And so how could we make sure that as we're trying to elevate the brand, all of those experiences are integrated? And that was, the strategy behind me coming on board was to bring that team together into one integrated brand experience organization.
Yeah, now let's ask the really obvious but important questions. Why does that matter?
What I would say, the art of branding is really the art of make-believe. Make-believe meaning you want to make people believe something. And, that was where Zuora was in their journey was, how do we get our customers, our prospects, our audiences to believe in our expanded potential, believe in our expanded offering, believe in the momentum of the company, right? How do we get Wall Street to pay attention and believe the right way? And so, that's the role that branding plays is how do you get audiences to believe in the promise of your brand? How do you turn the reasons to buy your software, this company, this story into reasons to believe, right? And so that was really important is how do you take, the great technology that Zuora was building and the momentum they had as becoming a product-led company and turn them into a company that meets brand with product growth and performance.
We're hitting on really valuable topics already. This is the point of these interviews. I like the twist that you put on that. So bringing that alignment across the whole company is really important. And you kind of hinted at it, especially as a publicly traded company. It's a big deal to make sure that that alignment is there as that organization is growing and already has pretty significant scale. The game of make believe. I like how you even told that story. All right, so you join the team. Zuora recognizes the importance of getting that alignment and investing in brand, and then I'm guessing you're tasked with finding the right team to work with. Now, we've already kind of suggested that we had worked together before. Was there any decision making that was different this time around?
Yeah, at the time that I was speaking with the company and making the decision to join the team, the need for brand and brand transformation was high on the list, right? Again, that's why we had gotten in the conversation in the first place. You guys were certainly one of the first people that I called, right? I think as trusted partners, having just the history of the great work that we did together at Marketo and Adobe, so certainly, had you guys top of mind, but there was certainly work that needed to be done before we were actually able to get a project kicked off. And I think part of that work was around, again, this concept of make believe that branding plays, which is getting everybody on the same page, right? How do you start to get everybody to start believing in the same thing? With Zuora, brand was such a priority that you had a lot of people that were trying to solve it in their own ways, right? And so when you have that, you have a lot of teams that are starting to say, hey, brand is this, and we're going to make these investments and take it down this path. Then you had a product organization that was, again, same positive intent, but different approach, right? And you had another organization, again, same noble intent, different approach. And so the work early on was about connecting with everyone, sort of establishing partnership with a new organization coming into, an organization of legacy teams to start to at least get everybody to see the problem from the same perspective so that then collectively the teams were on board with bringing in a new partner to come in and help us solve the problem. I also think, we're in an age of in-house and B2B teams, in concert with external agencies. And I think a lot of organizations are still trying to figure that out. And so, you have many teams where, they believe that, hey, we've made these investments internally, we should be able to solve this problem internally. But sometimes when you have a lot of different teams working together, that external third party provides just a great vehicle as a facilitator, as a partner to help drive these teams to make decisions. And so that was some of the work that needed to be done, right? The alignment internally to get everybody on the same page, see the problem from similar perspectives, to then get on board with saying, hey, let's bring in an external partner to come help us with this work.
Yeah. And you've expressed this, but I want to reiterate how important that work is. Getting those groups together within a single focus of why we're doing this, what it means, and in alignment before a project kicks off is a monumental task. One, that's a lot of work. Thank you for that. And second is really imperative to the speed, efficiency, and success of the project. Without that, you're doing that in the project. And that happens all the time. And it doesn't mean those projects fail either, but they are so much smoother when that work is done up front. And quite honestly, it takes somebody like yourself to understand that and to organize it. We can project how important that is, even in our own kind of onboarding process and stuff like that. But having somebody inside the other camp, if you will, that understands that and has already started that work is really important. That would be another huge takeaway of this call already, understanding how important it is to do that work up front. Are there any critical steps in that process that you would maybe highlight here that people could act on?
I mean, one, thank you for the support in those statements. And I would say when you go through this process several times, having a structured sort of internal discovery is critical, right? I think a lot of people might say, hey, we're not going to start any of this work until we get the agency on board. We're searching for an agency. We're going to spend a lot of our time in the RFP process. We're going to spend our time writing our brief, and whoever answers the brief best, we're going to join them, and we're going to start the work that day one kickoff meeting. And, having gone through this several times, just to your point around learning experiences, tips, there's an adequate amount of alignment that needs to happen up front. And I would say this was in my first 30 days at the company. Approaching an effort like this, while I had the relationship with your team, behind the scenes, I had a point of view and maybe a sense of direction of where things needed to go. I sort of needed to carry all that in my back pocket. Yeah. In these early days, it's about getting in, listening, establishing the partnerships and connections, right? I like to say, kind of walking in with an empty cup. And so when you're walking in and you're listening to what these teams are saying and you're hearing the solutions that they've been implementing, but getting underneath to the why they went those directions. What did they learn? What was the feedback? What were the insights? And you're gathering all that in the process. Then when you are ready to bring on an agency, what's happening is that this effort is representative of the collective effort versus the effort of just the brand team or just the marketing team that might be driving this. Right. So I think, the biggest piece is establishing relationships cross-functionally, broadly, quickly, and, making sure that when you kick off these processes, that the people that you bring to the table are not just creative, not just brand, but these cross-functional teams that you've been doing the discovery with. That's the way that you start to get people invested early. I've been chatting about this challenge. I've been establishing this partnership. I'm now brought into the tent and we're ready to play ball.
So how do you avoid the conundrum, which could be having so many people involved that now it becomes unwieldy? There's a fine line there.
This is something we could borrow from like sprint and design thinking processes, right? Design sprints, design thinking, where, you have to name a decider, right? And I think that decider isn't necessarily the person meant to be the loudest voice in the room. That person is meant to solve the challenge that you laid out, right? When you have a lot of opinions, you have a lot of great ideas, you need to make progress. You need to make decisions. And so the role of that decider is to hear everything that's been laid out, right? See where some of the energy is in the room, help bring the team to come to a decision. And I think that's a big part of this process. And that was a big part of the process at Zuora, which was you had a lot of passionate team members who already had ideas in motion in how to solve this and already had different understandings. And so, I think the steps were: 1, build a common view of the challenge. 2, build a common language around the challenges that we were solving and the different approaches that were there. And then 3, hold the view of what success was meant to be and always help keep the team marching towards success, right? With that shared outcome. And so when you have that shared outcome and you play the role of the decider, then what you're able to do is help sort of reflect the priorities back to the team. Hey, this is what the team agreed on were the priorities. This is what the team agreed on were the attributes. This is what the team agreed on and what success and outcomes look like. My job is to help keeping us move towards those outcomes.
Yes. Sir, I've got to tell you, we've spent more time in this section than I've spent in any other interview, and it has been so valuable. We're touching on things that are not touched on in my other interviews. And I think that is both because of your experience and, again, maybe the scale and the size of the rebrand that was Zuora and how to navigate this. It's another monumental task. That's why these rebrand projects can be long and arduous. And I would even argue that they're meant to be, quite honestly. That they just can't be easy. They're not supposed to be easy. The challenge at play is not an easy challenge. So yes, thank you for highlighting the importance of the decider. It is something that we speak to in the onboarding process of a project. Some people are familiar with that language. Some people struggle with the language, right? And not necessarily in disagreement, but just in understanding of what does it look like in practice. right? Does that
Yeah.
mean just, I'm going to make all the calls now and the CEO's opinion doesn't matter? It's like, no, it doesn't mean that, but someone needs to be that key facilitator, like you're saying, that helps the ball continue to roll, whether that's in the background or having to come really close to the foreground to help decisions be made.
Well, I think there's a couple things to highlight in those points that you made, which is, part of this process is a lot of times when you're an organization that's kicking off something like this, it becomes, we own it. It's ours. There's I think a shift that needs to come into play where it's, our job as the brand experience organization was to steward this process, but our job was not to own this in terms of make ours only, right? It was meant to be ours broadly as a collective team. And so our job continued to be, how do we make people feel like they're invested in this and that their names are on this and that they can feel proud of the work that they're going to do in this and make it more theirs than our own, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's a piece of it around ego and not coming into this with ego, being willing to let go of things that you might not used to be letting go with, of, right? I'll tell you another one of Insiders was our product marketing organization, because there were areas in their domain that we wanted the decision to feel driven by them, right? We were just helping bring all the point that you made about this being a long process. I come back to process a lot in this story for the Zuora brand, because sometimes you've got to trust the process, even if you feel inclined to rush the process, right?
Yes. Yes.
You got to give time for it to bake. You got to give time and space for it to think. You got to let people come back to the work, right?
Yes. I think that is often one of the most uncomfortable parts of the project, which is the patience game. It takes time to bake. It's like literally the best way to say it. You can't rush it. Even when you feel like you're onto something great and things might seem like they're going faster than anticipated, the bake still has to happen. And there's all these other kind of components that need to happen, and other people are. It's not that everyone needs to weigh in and we need everyone's opinion every week, but things do need to be communicated appropriately so people understand and people are bought in, whether they love a color or not, right? Like irrelevant of those things, that baking takes time. And the more time that you allow the process to fully bake, the better the cake is, right?
It's
and not
true.
Just marginally better, which is why we build backwards, the same way that a cake is built. And at least if not fully backwards, starting with story, strategy, narrative, all those things, and then starting to overlap and parallel with the iterations and the ideation on logo. Good times. It's hard to be patient, though. That's the takeaway. It is 100% hard to be patient. Even when Focus Lab went through its rebrand, I knew I would feel the pain, and I also felt the pain, right? Like I can empathize very easily with you. Like, I just want to get to the other thing. Okay. Yeah, I just want to get to the other thing.
Kudos to you for, taking your own medicine, right? Because when you're the one doing this work, right, and you're doing the branding work and you're doing the web work or whatever it might be, often the work that gets the least amount of love is your own, right?
Sure.
And so I just want to take a moment, talk to me about how you guys got to a place where you could prioritize doing your own brand.
The short answer would be COVID, because we had the capacity to do it. But beyond that, you also need to recognize that it's a worthwhile investment of your time and energy and not doing other things to try to drum up work. But we were also at an inflection point as a company that was like year 10, I believe it was, right at the decade for us. And our story was different than what our brand was projecting. It would have been hard for you to believe, going back to the make believe, it would have been hard for people to believe what we were saying, say in a call or face to face, and what they were seeing then as our brand presented digitally through our website, for example. The two were different. We had grown up a lot, but we still had the old shell of our old, younger, less mature company in a lot of ways, less mature in both positioning, what we stood for, how we approached the work, and all those types of things. So we had the time, and we said, now's the time to rock and roll. And we did it. And I'm really glad we did it. It's like you said, it's really important to slow down and do that for yourselves. A lot of agencies don't. I think that's a big fail point for a lot of agencies.
Well, I'd even say it's true for a lot of companies, right? A lot of marketing organizations, especially in the software space. We spend so much investing in the brands of our customers and helping them innovate and helping them accelerate and helping, raise their profile. And sometimes we lose sight of our own, right? And I think the story that you just shared is similar for so many CMOs and so many heads of brand and executives, which is, when do you find the right time, right? Which is what you said, we needed to start to make sure that our story and our growth was reflected externally and that we could actually make people believe in our growth and momentum as a company, and also make your team believe, right? Because I think after time, having a new flag that you're planting in your brand with a new message, a new vision, that's reinvigorating for your brand internally, right? To keep people excited and put a vision out there that helps them, weather the storms that are going to come with growing as a company.
Yeah, the thing for me, it's like, and I would hope this is true for anybody that's really trying to create something impactful. I lose sleep at night if I ask myself the question, I wonder if anybody in the company was asked, what do we stand for? Like, why do we exist as a company and why does it matter? And if right now we're 35 people, if there were 35 different answers, I wouldn't be able to sleep knowing that that is the case. Mm-hmm. So during a rebrand effort, and you're getting all that alignment we just all talked about, getting everybody all on the same page to a single narrative, to a single position in the market. It's like, okay, I can breathe now. All right, we've got that really important segment of our brand figured out. So yes, to your point, I would hope that even larger organizations with 1,000 people, they should be losing sleep if everyone is answering that question, those series of questions in very different ways. That is really problematic from a business alignment perspective. And how do you get momentum if people can't answer those types of questions, which is a part, without trying to sell our services, is a really big part of a rebrand, right? That's a lot of the value. It's not the logo, right? Like that's an outcome. That's a symbol to identify with, but it's that alignment piece that is super valuable.
Well, I mean, that's a telltale sign that it's time, right? If marketers are out there asking, when do we know that it's time? It's a great example, right? Are you losing sleep about people being able to tell a consistent story about who the company is and where the company is, right? And I would say, that was a lot of that work in the first 30 days at Zuora, going to all of these different groups and saying, what's the company vision? What is our purpose? Give us the elevator pitch. And, just at that stage, there were 7-10 different pitches, right? We had statements that were in onboarding decks. We had statements that were in earnings documents. We had statements that showed up on press releases. We had statements that were on the website. We had statements on LinkedIn. They were not the same. And so that was a great way to show everyone, this is part of the challenge that we need to solve, is how do we get us all on the same page? How do we have a consistent message and story out there in the market? And how do we put the same set of beliefs in everyone's minds around this company, what this company does, and where this company is headed?
Yeah. How do you achieve it if nobody even can tell you what it is, kind of thing? That's a critical problem. But it is often easier to say, we need to continue building product. We need to build this new feature. And that's the dilemma, right? And being able to get people to step back, organizations to step back. They're either stepping back themselves or someone's poking them saying like, hey, you're missing a really important thing here. Let's talk about brand.
I'll give you one extra credit one there, which is in most software companies, you can always find people in product who can tell you what it is. But the key and the reason why brand leaders exist is that the people that they might speak to don't understand what that means.
Oh, right. Yeah.
People can speak to the speeds and fees of the company and what it does, but does that resonate with your audience? Do they understand that, care about it? That's the role of brand leaders, is translating that into, again, those reasons to believe.
All right. In project. So now we're in the project. We'll spend a little time here. First question is, what was the most challenging aspect of the Zuora rebrand?
I'd say the most challenging aspect is what I call balancing progress versus perfection. There's often a lot of times when you have expectations of something going a certain way, and then there becomes the reality of the way that it needs to go, right? The best way for it
Yeah.
to go. It's not about having the perfect presentation. It's not about having the perfect iteration of the work. It's about having the enough of the work that creates space for people to contribute to get to the next version of the work.
Yes. Extremely iterative, highly
Mm-hmm.
collaborative. The inverse of that, what was the most rewarding aspect of the Zuora rebrand?
You know what's interesting is I was thinking about this the other day. We had two videos for the rebrand effort, right? We had the brand launch video, which was revealing our
Yep.
brand to the world. And then we had our brand hype video, which was revealing the brand progress to the teams internally. And I've got to say that brand hype video in the middle, first off, both videos were great. And thank you to the teams that helped work on those and produce those. But when I look at the impact and sort of those highlights, that brand hype video in the middle of the project was just the excitement and the energy that came from it was just palpable, right? I feel like
Uh,
that video was about the journey versus the video that was the brand reveal video to the public was the destination. And
yes.
so the video in the
Yes.
middle was about the journey, was a video about the stories of all the Zoom calls and the brainstorming sessions and the sound bites from people that came up when they thought of the word brand or when they thought of Zuora, and the footage that we gained our insights from to figure out what were the colors that people resonated most with, what was the energy, what was the spirit of the company that they wanted to see come through in the brand. And we used all of that to build this brand reveal video that was somewhat in progress of the work, but also just reflection of all of the teams across the company that had participated in this work. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we were able to take that video and show it at our sales kickoff, the excitement was profound. It was a lot of fire emojis and chats. It was essence, right? Essence of the company matched with potential of where the company was headed, and just
Yep.
the excitement that came after that for months, right? People participating in all the work, people being excited to dive in and evangelize the brand work and evangelize the growth of the company. It was a milestone moment for sure.
So during a project, at a certain point, there is an opportunity to loop in the broader company. Now, as our company, we say be very careful on how you approach that. You really want to wait till things are finished before you do a full reveal. But what you're talking about is this kind of like teaser video, essentially, right?
Mhm.
We've been working on a thing. And what you did is you created kind of this hype reel to get people excited, which started to show some of the elements and tease out some of the thinking in the process, but did not actually show final outcomes yet, right? It was just enough for them to be like, oh God, I can't wait to have that thing. But I don't know what it fully is. Is that kind of how you approached it? Because I can't even remember the middle
Yeah,
project video at this point.
yeah. No, thanks for calling that out. So, what the brand video was, it was about a midway point in the project. And, several teams have been involved in knowing that this work was coming. But to your point, a lot of the work was happening behind the scenes from a broader sense, right? People knew that
Yep.
something was coming, but they didn't necessarily broadly know where it was yet. At this stage, there were some decisions being made around colors, around fonts, some of the building blocks that it was going to take from a visual identity standpoint. At the same
Yep.
time, there were messages that we were already testing in the market, starting to get feedback from partners in our partner ecosystem that really helped us gain confidence that we were headed in the right direction. So once we had a strong sense of direction, even though we didn't have polished materials, it gave us an opportunity to tell a story about where the work was
Yes.
and
There you go.
highlight some new words and points that were coming up in our story and our narrative. Highlight some of the feedback from their fellow colleagues that had been involved, who they might not have known that were involved. Highlight and showcase some of the design elements, some of the web elements, some of the product explorations that were happening to really get people excited. It was certainly a responsible share out, being that, most of the material that was shared wasn't public facing ready, but it brought the team in.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that's some of the balance that you have to strike when you're leading efforts like this, is like you have this desire to hide all the sausage making behind the curtain so that when you deliver it, it's a well prepared, well plated meal, right?
Yep.
But when you're trying to, again, make believe, right? Make people believe in something, sometimes you got to bring them in, right? You got to let them behind the curtain, let them see what's going on in the kitchen. You can't touch any of the food, right? Don't
you don't get to taste it yet and give your opinion on it. Yeah.
Take a look at this, right? Look at the way that we're prepping. Look at the way that, all the thought and energy and effort from the people that's going into this, something that you're going to be really proud of and you're really going to enjoy. I think that's the spirit of it. I'd say the second thing is these efforts are long, right? And a lot of times in, fast-paced companies, technology companies for sure, it's about having long-term vision with near-term results. And if you've got people that are investing in this effort because you want to build excitement for the brand and excitement for the company, where are the opportunities that you can find to get people excited without compromising the work, right? And so a sales kickoff, big company meeting, those are the types of things where road showing your brand work goes a long way to its success and the ability to launch and make decisions successfully, right?
Yeah, really well said there at the end. Like you want to look for those opportunities to capture and build on that excitement, because they can be long. In this example, it was quite long as we're building out all the things for Zuora as such a large organization. You don't want that energy or that narrative. Build excitement, but don't jeopardize, I guess, the process really. And you did a fantastic job at that.
The executive leader over these things sometimes is to be the best PR representative for your team, right?
Yes.
So I think, as I had to shift gears from being the driver to being the champion. That was strategically so that the teams were invested and the teams who were responsible for the work could be proud of the work that they were doing. They felt closer and connected. And my job was to clear the path and cheer them on, right? And so finding these moments of, when is a great opportunity to showcase this work? It's not only about building excitement for the work, but building excitement for the team doing the work. The team doing the work gets to see the response from the rest of the company. They get to get the kudos and the people cheering them on, right? So I think, just as a leader who's doing this work, finding those moments where you can keep the team excited and keep the team energized and always show them, hey, here's what we're working towards. Look at the excitement, look at the support, look at the anticipation that people have for the work that you're doing, right? That goes a long way into keeping people motivated and driving the whole way.
Yes. It also highlights the importance of a dedicated seat. It's not a necessary thing, but it is super valuable. A dedicated seat like yourself. Imagine a founder trying to do, or CEO trying to do all the things we've discussed on top of leading the organization and having to think about all the other stuff, the revenues and giving financial earnings reports and all these things. Like, they can't do all of the stuff that we've already discussed, not because they're not talented enough. They just wouldn't even have the time to do it. They wouldn't have the capacity. You sitting in that seat and being the driver and the champion and the facilitator and the steward and all these things that are so important, really valuable, super duper valuable. It is invaluable having somebody in that seat. It truly is. We know going into a project, if someone is clearly positioned as that person, the project is going to be so much more effective, efficient, but just the chances of like success are literally like 99.9%, because there is that dedicated seat there on the project. We as an organization couldn't appreciate people like you more. Literally, you make our life and our job easier, better, more successful, etc. Seriously.
Well, thank you. But I'm going to put it right back on you too, because, we've talked a lot about the process, but part of this process exists because of you guys and partners like yourselves, right? Where you're holding our teams accountable. even as we talked about some of the learnings, there are deadlines that the teams have
Yeah.
and sort of mixed priorities. And, it's valuable to have those deadlines sometimes be driven by folks outside of the company. Not to make it sound cold, but there is money involved in this transaction. There's budget, there's quarterly spend, right? That we need to
Yep.
realize, that we need to execute against. And so having that independent party that doesn't have to deal with the earnings cycle and the company internal fluctuations and all that can help make this work persist at times where
Yeah.
there might be other things that are pulling away from the priority. And
Yeah.
so it's
Yep.
beneficial in a way when you've got a good team to partner with that's holding you accountable, that's helping drive some of the operations and creating the space for this process to happen, but also holding our feet to the fire, and there's real implications for things being missed. It really goes a
Yep.
long way saying, hey, I know that we can't make this a priority right now, but decisions have to be made or we're going to face consequences.
That scenario is really valuable. There's a lot of tension there around seems like you need more time, but you're right. Like that's going to change the timeline. That can change costs, right? So you never really want to be bad cop, especially in an organization like ours, and how we really care about the customer experience and how we are perceived as a partner and not just a vendor. But it is really valuable to have that third party to say it's basically an accountability partner. That's the best way to say it. You have a dedicated accountability partner, even though that's that person that's saying you got to go to the gym today, and you're like, God, I hate this person. I don't want to go to the gym today. It's still valuable to have that person. I'm happy you said that. I actually had that conversation recently too in another interview, and they pointed out the same thing, which is to have a third party hold our feet to the fire.
It's the old adage, the constraints breed creativity. And I think when you're with creative work, there's countless ideas that you come up with. And again, that balance between progress and perfection, right? We just want to get this last piece of input. We just want to, get one more turn to get the corner of that R the right way. Might be, but there's times where you got to make a decision. You got to progress the work, right? You got to keep excitement up, hit deadlines, meet cost, and you got to take advantage of opportunities. You got to be prepared for the opportunity.
Now, having gone through 2 projects with you, big rebrands, both of them substantial, Marketo and Zuora, what was different about the 2?
In the Marketo project, what was interesting was I think everyone was bought into the same flow of the process from the very beginning. And what that meant was that there were decisions being made faster, and where we had slowdowns were based on legal. I think if you go back and watch the Marketo, we talk about legal in the global, trademark search and all of that, that was something that was a learning experience there, which meant, baking more time in and setting expectations up front around the process of legal approval, trademark approval before being able to get to use finished work. But the process seemed to move through the gates much more quickly. And it was great work that came out of that, and great excitement, great momentum. Now, the work at Zuora wasn't too far off from that same timeline, but the process and the journey was different. The destination was the same. The journey was different. The journey was different because it was a combination of work that was in progress, as well as evolutions happening in many different facets of the company. We're a company who's trying to move up market, expand to multi-product, change our perception of the market. It's 1, 2, all 3, right? I think Marketo had a lot more maturity in some of its multi-product strategy. And so the process around branding was a lot more focused because, there was a lot more completion on those different fronts to make branding sort of the central focus of the work. When it came to Zuora, you had a lot of change, right? You had a lot of momentum being gained in a lot of different areas. And the work became, how do you bring all of those in harmony, right? How do you take all of these tunes that people are playing and compose them into a piece of work? And that involved, plugging into people's strategies and different priorities and different perspectives on where the brand was headed and what the company was. We had milestones set, but some of those milestones had to slide because, again, the process needed more time to bake, right?
Yes.
The logo work was surprisingly fast, right? Very unique mark.
Sure.
Wasn't something that, had a lot of contention. So the trademark process went faster than I had ever imagined. The narrative work was the bigger challenge because the company narrative was changing. Our offering was expanding beyond subscriptions to other types of monetization models. So as all these forces are all sort of maturing at the same time, the work of this brand was to capture all of that momentum of all these different areas of the company, pull it together, pull those leaders together, and try and get people to a place where they could see the same story. They could see the same vision. Whereas, in the previous project, sort of the vision was laid, right? The vision was laid, but the narrative and the brand identity needed to be evolved. Here, we needed to go back to vision, right? And we needed to kick the tires on the, made sure that it was a strong enough foundation for all of the new work to come.
A monumental task, and it takes time. I mean, what are all the things that you have to update as well? Right? I can't even imagine the list for Zuora of all the things that y'all had to update.
It was 165 touch points across the company, categories of touch points, everything from in office to legal documents to login screens to websites to social media to all types of things, right? Decks, presentations, localized content, international content. But there's a toolkit in your process that I think helps really drive some of that success, right? Video content, recording meetings, recording views, that really speeds up some of the time that might seem daunting to the people watching this around how do I pull everyone into the room at the same time? How do I gather collective feedback? How do I get the right feedback and the right inputs to make decisions fast enough when people are traveling or when, vacation times are not aligning or holidays or whatever it might be. And video was a huge unlock, right? Sitting down, recording these interview sessions, and then playing those interview sessions back for other interested parties that wanted those inputs, doing reviews where we were presenting the work over recordings and then sending those recordings out to teams for them to review on their own time, hugely valuable. Share documents for reviews where people can leave comments and you can see the history of the comments so that you see the collective feedback and you can see how that feedback's being addressed in different iterations. Huge benefit in progressing the work, right?
Yeah, I forgot how much you leveraged video on your side as well, because then we're sending you videos of our work at the end of the week so you can share those asynchronously as well and not have to worry about a dedicated pitch time or something, and you have to get everybody together every single week. Video is a big unlock. It's funny. I think a lot of people think that we do that now as a result of COVID and the pandemic. You would know that's not true. We've been doing video deliverables now for, I honestly can't even remember. It's been so long. I literally cannot remember us not doing them. We're 13 years old. It would have had to have been year 3 or year 4 where we started to make that transition. All right. 2 final questions. First question is, what did the rebrand allow Zuora to do that it couldn't do before?
What was great about Zuora is that Zuora has a great brand as the subscription economy leader. It's the company that introduced the world to the power of transforming their business model to a subscription business model and the power of recurring revenue. And, certainly taking pages from, the work that Adobe has done, shifting from products to subscriptions and other companies like that. As that market has matured, people have launched their first subscription, multiple subscriptions. They have different ways of making revenue or business revenue streams. And, what started to happen for Zuora is that it just started to become the subscription only company. Right. And so that was just getting into conversations that involved areas well within Zuora's capabilities and expertise, but not being top of mind for those conversations because they were seen as a subscription company and subscriptions started to seem more niche. Right. So the work that we did in the brand work was both the discovery and the positioning around broader portfolio, broader monetization opportunities, consumption billing, usage-based pricing, payments, collections, paywalls, payment gateways, revenue recognition, revenue automation. These are all things that are challenges that grew exponentially because people moved to subscriptions, and challenges that Zuora was still the most well-equipped to help companies solve. And so companies were not able to see that previously. They were not able to see that prior to the brand transformation work. So afterwards, a much broader position and expansion of opportunity for the company that was not available prior to the work being done.
Yes, the story was clear. So then I'm guessing at that point, Zuora is now, or was then at that moment, more top of mind and taken more seriously in those categories, as opposed to, oh, they can't do that, even though you could.
Absolutely. Well, some of the things that we found out is that people in our partner ecosystem had a very evolved story for how they positioned Zuora in their meetings and their conversations. Their feedback was, you guys are selling yourself as this, but we're selling you as this, right? And your story,
wow, very interesting,
hasn't caught up to the way that we're selling you. Well, that was part of our opportunity, was to fix that, right? So now, to your point, that you were making about your own brand work, is that the conversations that we were having in the room and that our partners were having in the room match the conversation that you would see online, match the conversation that you hear at events, match the conversation that you see from our brand. And so now the expectations of what Zuora did aligned with how people were positioning us in the boardroom.
Right. And how important is that? How valuable is that?
Exponential, right? You're talking bigger size, new landing opportunities, right? Oh, we could only land with one product. Now we can land with 4 different products. Oh, increased revenue on product lines that were not revenue drivers before, right? All of that happened because of the expanded brand opportunity.
Yes. Fantastic. All right. Final question.
All right.
If you were sitting down with a founder or a CEO and they were having trouble understanding an investment in brands, they were skeptics, what would you tell them?
I'd ask them a lot of questions first. Figure out where they are, why they're afraid, what their strategy's been. At some point, we'd probably get to a conversation around the importance of growth and product and demand and pipeline. And I would say that, your investment in brand for everyone that seeks to become a customer-centric company is probably one of the most customer-centric investments that you can make, because your brand investment is about building a closer connection with your audiences, closer connection with your customers, and meeting them where they are and giving them an opportunity to help shape the trajectory of your company, and recognizing the value that they provide and the value that they can continue to provide as the company grows. And that might not necessarily seem as obvious to folks, but when you're doing the work of brand transformation, you're spending time with customers, you're spending time with employees, you're spending time with the partner ecosystem, you're spending time with industry influencers, and you're finding out, what do people care about? How do people think about your company? What do people want to see more of from your company? And a lot of times you can address that stuff in product, but even if you address it in product, if you don't have great branding, if you don't have great brand work, nobody knows about it. And so that's the work of the brand team, is to tell these stories, to mine these stories. Choose a brand leader to help find your customer advocates that are going to tell, and evangelize your brand from the rooftops. Choose, your brand leader to find how people feel about the company and how they want to feel about the problem that they're facing, and how our brand can deliver that promise of solving that challenge and helping this customer feel empowered, helping them feel more innovative, helping them feel supported, helping them feel like they've got a partnership. That's the role of your brand leader, is, again, to help make people believe that this company is capable of solving those challenges and helping that customer become successful.
Yes. We're obviously trying to create a world where people do believe in the power of brand specifically. I think it can often be seen as a frou-frou, feelings only design and communications exercise, stuck to the brand department, marketing department of an organization. And we're trying to unlock that ourselves and have founders, CEOs see the bigger picture there. And it's important for other people to speak to it, not just me. Right. So Thank you for sharing your thoughts there. I sure hope we meet at another project and unlock the potential in yet another company through brand.
I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your team, and excited to see you guys continue to grow. So whatever you need, I'm always here, man.